down in Petersburg, everything's fine. All them cats is drinking that wine. Drinking that mess is their delight. When you get drunk, start singing all night. Drinking wine's for you to drink wine. Wine's for you to drink wine. Wine's for you to drink wine. Pass that bottle to me. Drinking that mess is their delight. When it gets drunk, start fighting all night. Knocking down windows and tearing down doors. Drinking half gallons and calling for more. Drinking wine's for you to drink wine. Wine's for you to drink wine. Wine's for you to drink wine.
Welcome to this new tasting Anarchy Winos. We are once again joined by my mother on this lovely, lovely Mother's Day.
Yes.
As always, I'm Jacob Lindsay. And,
Mason Joseph.
Yeah. And I'll use the Ron Paul introduction. Very good. And so let's go ahead. We'll go ahead and get started. Before the show began, I had this really interesting one. We actually mentioned it briefly on the show last week, but I saved about a glass worth for Mason. And this is it's just a varietal that I'd never seen before, and it wasn't in my book, called Carmenere.
This is the Carmenere.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And so this is a single vineyard Carmenere from Chile. It's very interesting. It's a very, very tell me what you would describe it as.
I can't get over the fact that this is the first wine that has a smell that is exactly in the taste.
Okay.
And it's a smell I know,
right? But
I cannot place.
See,
it's almost bloodish, kind of in a blood sausage.
It does have a bit of a
short of that.
I think it's very peppery, like black pepper. It does have kind of a metallic flavor. I wrote down
maybe when you first opened it.
Yeah, I wrote down pepper, very tannic. I said very little fruit, but maybe a little bit of blueberry. So that was what my analysis was.
Very tannic. Definitely some spice to it, like a black pepper. Mm-hmm. That's really interesting. I can see that I can see that being as the back flavor on a lot of blends.
Right.
But it's also one of those ones where I bet a $90 bottle is
probably
really tasty.
Yeah. This is a $24 bottle at Total Wine. But I think I'm starting to venture out into I wouldn't say snobbery exactly, but I just want to try things that are not very common.
Mm-hmm.
And
you spend a little bit more trying stuff that's not common, but it's kind of like that New Zealand wine we had where it was still $10, but it's are we drinking $2 Chuck from New Zealand?
Yeah, exactly.
That's what it took to get it to the United States, or is it $7 bottle of wine, which can be really nice.
And that sort of kind of brings me to the varietal that I picked this week. Yeah. This is my week, and for the first time ever, I picked a white.
Yes, you did.
I almost always pick a red, which is actually the Carmenere is a red, very, very deep red, really pleasant to look at. A
lot of legs.
Yep, yeah, and so it's a very dry wine for those of you who missed the episode where we explain what legs are, and meaning it is low in sugar. So this week I chose a wine, and we're going to butcher it, but I actually wrote out the pronunciation on here. It's Rkatsiteli. Rkatsiteli.
In wine, a lot of the especially when you look at the Georgian varieties, there's no way you're gonna get it pronounced it right.
Right.
This is the way the bottle is designed, and because the sticker got a little messed up in it.
Right.
To me, it honestly looks like something that the vineyard just made up.
Right.
We're gonna make up this varietal.
Right. So what's interesting about this one is this one is Horton's Vineyard, which is here in Virginia. It's up in Orange County, Virginia.
Yeah.
This varietal I thought was very interesting when I was reading about it online. So this is a Georgian varietal. It's one of the first ever cultivated varietals.
So it looking like a made-up name, it's because it's Georgian. Yeah, that makes a lot more sense.
It's Georgian. They have evidence from clay pots going back to before 3000 BC with this varietal in it, and almost genetically identical to the current varietal. So very interesting, and I guess the name apparently literally translates to red stem. Mm-hmm. So it's apparently it's red stem, but they're white grapes.
Yeah, the Georgian grapes are always they're very interesting.
Right.
There's 5,000 of them.
Yeah.
But.
So I'll give a little bit of history for the varietal just because it was very interesting to me. It originated in Georgia, first fermented around 3000 BC. They have some dating a little bit
All
further
right,
back.
so I hate to interrupt, but
Okay.
this honestly smells like tuna.
Really?
Yeah, it smells like tuna fish.
Oh, interesting. It does a little bit, yeah.
And I'm normally like very nose deaf. Like that smells like canned tuna fish.
It does, yeah, a little bit, yeah. It does. So there's actually a monastery in Georgia in a place called Kakheti, Kakheti, that's still producing wine, and they've been producing wine in that location from 1011 AD, and apparently the same way for the last 1,000 years.
It's not broke, don't change it.
And one of the reasons this is apparently a very popular varietal in the Black Sea region is it does very, very well in very hot summers. Mm-hmm. It also does fine in sub-zero winters, which is that area has those very extreme temperatures.
So it's basically like Michigan.
Yeah, basically. And now the two places in the United States where they grow it, they do it in Orange County, Virginia, and the Finger Lakes region in New York. And that's almost exclusively it. There's a couple other places that have tried it, and they just don't produce a lot. It's also not very popular in the United States, although it was the number one varietal in the Soviet Union. And they would produce from just wine all the way to like hardcore liquor made from these grapes, distilled alcohol, that they would also use for like deglossing and whatever else.
Just running their engines.
Yeah, so it's very popular in former Soviet Union countries. It's actually still the number one varietal in Ukraine and Bulgaria for white wines. Mm-hmm. It's very popular in China, as we've mentioned in the past. That China has a very quickly growing wine industry. So this is a common description. I'll say that it says common description is restrained and refreshing with crisp green apple flavor and hints of quince, quince and white pear, which I don't know what quince is. Quince. Quince is a fruit?
It's a fruit. It's kind of a tart fruit.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've never had that. And they compare it with a high-quality Petite Cablisse. Am I saying that correct? Or a Pinot Grigio from northern Italy.
Yeah, so I've had a sip of it.
Okay.
It definitely has some Italian Grigio, like, lightness to the flavor, but the acidity's there. But there was the other Georgian varietal that I've had, and it's Georgian, so it has a very hard to pronounce name, and I'm not very good at it, has a very unique taste in there that this shares. And it was another white, but like I had two pures from this one winery, and like it was so weird because like they were great, but they gave me the most intense and unforgiving heartburn. Like I had to have Alka-Seltzer, Tums, and Pepto-Bismol to get it to like go down. Right. But like the wine was so tasty, it was like I could really have another glass of this, and then I was like, nope, gotta sleep tonight.
Hopefully this doesn't happen.
I don't think it will, but like this had that, kind of has that flavor to it. It's very soft.
It's soft. It also like there is a like almost skunky aftertaste.
What's that tuna?
Yeah.
I mean, just
this comes highly recommended. Skunk and tuna, just what I want.
Mm-hmm.
How much was it?
So on their website, retail is $20.
Okay.
$19.99. Total wine, $16.99. So not bad.
Yeah.
Interesting. And also an unusual varietal. As far as I could find at Total Wine, this is the only of the Rkatsiteli varietal.
Rkatsiteli?
Rkatsiteli.
I know I shouldn't be doing the R and the K, but that's my American pronunciation.
Yeah, so it's 13% alcohol by volume, so a little bit lower than what we normally do. But
according to the front of the bottle, it's 12.
Oh, is it 12? Okay, so I guess their website and the bottle disagree.
Well, they might be. Like this happens a lot on us, where like the website's about the 15, and this is the 16, or this is about the 17.
That's interesting because I'm going to read the description, and it said 2015, but I crossed out but 6. So it must have been the 2015, and I just didn't make the connection. Mm-hmm. So this is the description from their website, which is, again, not the greatest website. Yeah. But theirs is more not the greatest website because it looks like it was designed in, like, 2002.
I'm telling you. We can make a killing making websites for
wineries.
wineries.
So this is the description they have, is they say, a light parchment in glass. And that's actually one thing that we didn't really mention. It is an interesting color. It's almost clear.
Yeah.
But I would say like that light parchment it's slightly cream. Slightly cream colored. So a light parchment in the glass. Horton's 2015. I crossed that out and wrote 16, but it's 2015 according to this. And then the wine varietal, Rkatsiteli. Rkatsiteli, features orange blossom, pear, honey, and summer peach aromas. Orange blossom, maybe, but it is kind of overpowered by that kind of fishy smell.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't say it's fishy. I would almost say that it's yeasty.
Well, you know dogwood?
Yeah.
Like how it smells like bad shrimp?
Right, yeah. Yeah, that's kind of that smell. Yeah.
It's kind of along those lines where it's like, this is not a fruit-producing smell.
No, it smells a little weird, yeah. And so it says, delightfully bright attack is highlighted by citrus undertones. On the mid-plate, cascading flavors of vanilla cream, tangerine, key lime, white grapefruit, apricot, and pear.
I think that's being incredibly generous.
I think so, too, because it honestly doesn't have that much flavor.
No, but this also might be a varietal that you need to really have had several tries at it to pick up more of the flavors, because it's one of those ones I can tell there's some complexity to it.
And that could be. I also don't know that it was supposed to be served chilled. I couldn't find any information on that, and I chilled it because it's white. It may not be the type of white that you do chill.
Well, this is the thing is, like, I don't think you would be bad served for serving it chilled, but kind of tasting some of the flavors, I could also see it being one that would be okay warmer, especially because it's such a non-American varietal, like being from Georgia specifically, like in a very popular Georgian varietal. Like, I could see it not being chilled, because if you've been producing it for 5,000 years, you didn't chill it beforehand. Unless you went and buried it in the river stream 3 days ahead of time.
And this does, so it says a lovely extended finish, lingering with orange zest. That I would say is true. I do think it has an aftertaste of orange zest slightly.
Yeah, a little bit.
It's more of a skunky, but there's an orange zest mixed in. Granny Smith apples and pineapple notes. That I don't know so much.
Pineapple in the note. Yeah, the aftertaste.
This does seem like they want to describe it as being very appley, not nearly as appley as Pinot Grigio.
And definitely not as appley as the Italian or that New Zealand one. The New Zealand one was incredibly,
like cider, So, and then the food it says to serve with, you may or may not agree with this, Mason, because you always do the opposite. It says serve with potato pancakes.
That's a heavy food.
Yeah.
That's a heavy food.
Poached pork ramen. I don't know what that is, but I would eat that because it sounds pretty good.
Oh, I mean, it's ramen noodles and poached pork, which is just boiled pork.
Grilled fish with fresh herb salad.
Yeah, like, and that's the thing is that herb is probably going to be heavily with dill. Okay, because it's Georgian.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah,
so,
and like
a lot of. And I'm not a big fan of dill.
Yeah,
but this dill would accent this very well.
I had a really good egg salad sandwich at Green Kitchen with my mom for Mother's Day.
Oh yeah,
or not egg salad? Was it egg salad? Yeah, egg salad sandwich that was very, very heavy on the dill, and I like dill a lot. And I think it's mostly from living with Victoria because she puts a lot of dill and stuff, which is very typical Eastern European. And it was really good. It was fresh, tastes very fresh.
So we got to remember this one if we ever get to travel to the Ukraine or Bulgaria and try to get. But so there's the other show. There's a show I've mentioned once or twice where. It's called Russian Roulette, and it's like this think tank's show about Russia. And like they're the type of people who are like, oh, the Russian narrative, like collusion, it was totally true. And you're like, you guys are completely dumb. Why am I listening to the show? But I think they had one of these on the show at one point because they had a Georgian, one of the guys who's most responsible for bringing like new Georgian wines into the country. Like he's got it's like the little Georgian wine house, like in DC. That they had that guy on. And I think this is one of the brands they had. This is one of the varietals they had. Okay. And if you want to hear the name, I'm pretty sure that episode had it. So you kind of be like, oh, like this is how it's actually pronounced because they had a Georgian there. And it's funny because the one girl on the show, she escaped the Soviet Union as a kid with her family.
Oh, okay.
Or they were allowed to immigrate. You know, they didn't actually like run through borders or anything like that.
Sort of like the Michael Malice story where it was difficult, but they just had to bribe the right people to get out.
Yeah, I've never heard it exactly described that way, but I would imagine the same way. But she speaks Russian fluently because she was born Russian, and the other guy like has his doctorate in Russian studies and like goes to Russia and speaks in Russian when he's in Russia. So they both speak Russian, but like the Georgian guy is just like way out pronouncing them on the, because it's Georgian and it's not even close.
Yeah.
And it's like, they're trying to pronounce it close and they're just not even.
When you, like, it's so funny to see because I was actually kind of trying to look for it written out in Russian so that Victoria could tell me how to pronounce it, but I could only find it written in Georgian, which apparently is a different alphabet.
Oh yeah, completely.
And I had no idea.
We should have tried to find it in Ukrainian.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I should have. That's a good idea.
Especially if it's like the most popular varietal in Ukraine.
Right. It is. Yeah. It's in both Ukraine and Bulgaria, and it's still a very, very popular one in Russia, but it's number one in Ukraine, number one in Bulgaria, but it's also very high up in Moldova, Romania, like all those Eastern Bloc countries.
You should see if you get your mother, like how much trouble it would be for your mother-in-law to bring some back the next time she comes to visit.
Oh yeah, that'd be interesting.
Like a higher end one.
Yeah, we'll talk to her about it. It's probably pretty inexpensive because it's like. Oh, it's like 4,000 grivna. How much is that? It's like $20. So, or however many grivna it is. I don't remember the exchange rate. Victoria knows it, but
well, I mean, it fluctuates daily.
Yeah, it does. Yeah,
people trade it.
That's true.
So, but I'd be willing to go in for like something very high end than that to try to
and there are no. I mean, as far as I know, there's no sanctions or anything against Ukraine. It would, if we wanted like a Crimean varietal, that might be a problem.
But what the problem is like when you directly bring stuff in on foreign flights.
Oh right, okay.
Like when your mom's coming back from somewhere, if you're trying like flying military transport, it's usually already checked. But with the U.S., it's like when you're flying like an international flight in, it's kind of like what do you got?
Yeah, sure, yeah.
Especially because she doesn't.
I'm bringing a case of Diet Brooks root beer back to Bahrain.
Yeah, Diet Brooks is great.
Yeah,
that's what Jay likes. I can't get it in Bahrain.
Yeah,
that's his prize from the United States.
Yeah.
So now that we've had a couple more sips of this, have you changed your mind at all?
It's growing on me.
Yeah, it is on me as well. Like it's a little bit more. You know what it almost reminds me of a little bit is how like when you first drink grapefruit juice and you're kind of like ugh, and then like after a while you start. Well, I don't know if you do. I like grapefruit juice a lot.
A grapefruit juice is one of those ones that I can't get past it.
Okay.
Like sour beers, which are definitely very grapefruity, a lot of the times, I can get past it. Like Warheads, like the sour candies, I can do a couple of those in a row. Grapefruit juice is one of those ones where it's like, it never gets there for me.
You remember, Mom, when Danny Lang and I made friends with the lady who worked at the Shell station?
Yes.
And that she would always give us the discontinued candy, and she gave us like a whole bunch of Warheads.
I just really like the fact that this wine connoisseur show has turned into a discussion about Warheads.
Yeah,
Warheads. Oh man, Warheads are.
Yeah. I never really liked them. And, that's not true. I liked them.
Tarts.
Yeah, she used to give us this lady like anytime the Shell station would like not discontinue it, but like it was getting close to expired, so they would throw it out. Yeah. So she would give us whatever the candy was to my friend and I. But I remember that we didn't really like the Warheads that much. Or, the Warheads. No, it was Lemonheads. That's what it was. It was Lemonheads. We didn't really like them that much because it was free candy, though. We ate way too many and, it cut my mouth up real bad.
Yeah, I mean, after a while, those, they can just destroy your mouth.
Yeah.
What I'd love to see is genetic testing comparing this to Pinot Grigio and see how close, because there's so much.
There is a lot of similarity in them.
Yeah. And what I would really like to start seeing is people trying to crossbreed these heavy Georgian varietals into things, because if you mix this with Pinot Grigio, if you literally just took two glasses and poured them together, you wouldn't other than the heavy tuna smell,
right?
It wouldn't be an uncomplimentary flavors.
Sure.
So if you could breed some of the more the hardiness of the grape into this,
right, you
could grow in further northern climates.
Yeah,
like certain wine varieties that aren't as impacted. So Pinot Grigio, isn't, as far as I know, it's not necessarily the most dainty grape,
right?
But it also can't be grown in sub-zero temperatures. So this would be one of those ones if you could crossbreed it and then just get that strength of the hardiness to it to stand in there. I think that would really top off of a Pinot Grigio. And I think one of the things that's really interesting about it is there's kind of an unrefinedness to it, where it's this was bred to a specific style 5,000 years ago,
right? And
they didn't try anything else, and it's there's nothing else. They've just been I just imagine the most expensive bottle of this is amazing because it's everything has been refined to a certain point, but it's also kind of where people walk in with the French wines and they're compared to California in the 60s. They're yeah, you guys haven't been innovated in 500 years,
right?
This tastes like crap. You're just idiots.
Yeah.
Oh, this is so good.
Right. Well, and I wonder about that too. Is if we could get that one that's from Kakati, if we could get that one that's been made the same way since 1100 or 1011 AD, Like, I wonder what that's like. Because, the Georgia and Armenia, well, Armenia's south of Georgia, Armenia was the first country to adopt Christianity officially. Like, they were king or whatever. And so, like, they started a lot of the monastic movement where, like people, as people know, like, I'm really interested in the history of Christianity or whatever. Like, people very quickly got upset with the official Christianity and became... the monastic movement started, and it was just basically like they were like, well, I just want to go be alone with God, so they would go out into the desert, and then like a bunch of the guys who were out in the wilderness or in the desert or wherever would then get together and be like, well, let's just like chill out together.
Let's not starve to death.
yeah. And then they would start doing things like spirits or wine or growing a lot of food, that kind of thing, and I'm interested to see, like, I mean, this is obviously like, this is even several hundred years. I think Armenia adopted Christianity in like 300 AD or something.
It's like 370,
yeah,
something like that.
And so this is several hundred years later, but still the tradition's there, and they still do it in clay pots, which I'm interested in that because there is some breathing going on in the clay pots, and also if you're reusing the same clay pots over and over and over and over, like you have this like the same yeast cultivation and everything like that.
Yeah, it would be a really worthwhile trip.
Yeah, it would. It would be very interesting. Now, the other thing that's interesting about Horton Vineyard, they have another of this varietal, which I'm not going to continue to try to pronounce it, but they have another of this varietal, which is a late harvest. This is earlier harvest, and then they have a late harvest, which is apparently does change the flavor a lot. They allow it to ferment slightly on the vine, and then with the wild yeast and all that sort of stuff, which a lot of wine is fermented with wild yeast, but they don't do any additives or anything. For the later varietal, they didn't have that at Total Wine, but you can get it on their website, provided you're in...
How far away is Orange County?
It's just north of Richmond. It's pretty close. So, I mean, it would be nice if we could go up there. Yeah. I mean, obviously, I'm moving soon. And actually, as everybody knows, like I've had plans or whatever. This past week, I accepted a job in Dallas, so I'll be moving. But at the same time, it's like a $90 flight or $75 flight or whatever from Dallas to DC if you plan in advance. So,
if it's just north of Richmond, on the way down,
right on the way down, stop, grab a couple bottles, or meet you halfway up and just hang out at the vineyard. Yeah. There are so many really nice vineyards in Northern Virginia, and this will be like the tourist, whatever that's called, like when like the tourist, like trying to get people to come to Virginia or whatever. But like I'm up at Green Hill Vineyard, which I follow them on Twitter. You can follow them at Green Hill Vineyard on Twitter, and you can also follow us at Tasting Anarchy on Twitter. Yes. And so if you can't find them, you can follow us at Tasting Anarchy, and then go to who I'm following, and then you'll see these vineyards. But that's a really great vineyard.
If you know how to use Twitter.
Yeah.
Which I don't.
Yeah. Yeah. So
started our Twitter, but have no idea how to use it.
Right. Well, and the only thing I ever use Twitter for is to make fun of Bernie Sanders and like John McCain and stuff like that. So, or complain to Feinstein or one of these people. Actually, or like what's her name? What's the lady who is like, we think it's worth it that we killed 500,000 children? What's her name again? Madeleine Albright.
Yeah, Albright.
Yeah, I tweet her all. Now, granted, all these people are about 1 million. I know they don't run their own Twitters, but I just feel like better when I rag on them.
Yeah, unless you're the Trump.
Yeah, that's true. He does
apparently because he only sleeps 4 hours a night.
Yeah, which leads us into our topic.
Ah, yeah.
Wow. Great segue.
Did you tell him ahead of time?
I did not. No, I did not. But that does lead us into the first topic, and the first topic was inspired by a recent episode of Rogan.
Okay.
Where he had
the guy, like another show was talking about that I like that you don't listen to was talking about
Matt Walker, the Dr. Matt Walker. Okay, yes.
The neuroscientist.
Yeah, he's a neuroscientist. He's a sleep expert. Mm-hmm. And so one of the things that he mentioned in the show that got me thinking about this topic again, because one of my least favorite things that I've always said that's going to be on my list of things to get rid of when I'm dictator is daylight savings.
Yes.
Absolutely hate daylight savings. It's absolutely ridiculous. I know it, and I know it costs money, but I never considered the health ramifications, but Matt Walker brings them up in this episode.
We've talked about the health ramifications.
Well, I went over
higher level stroke.
Yeah. Well, I guess maybe hearing it from a doctor had more impact. I don't know.
Well, here's the thing: you were the one telling me about these because I didn't think it was that big of a deal.
Maybe I did. Maybe I knew about them and I'd forgotten.
Of course, this was 8 years ago.
That's possible. So I did a little bit of research. So, Mom, do you like daylight savings?
No.
But actually, you and I had the same belief that it was started by Benjamin Franklin as like a way to save farmers' time or whatever.
I don't remember thinking it was Benjamin Franklin, but I did think it was a farming thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I've always thought it was ridiculous because who on earth believes that you're gaining an hour.
Right. Well, that's actually based on a Mises article. That's one of the top reasons that they have against it. Is they're like, there is no daylight savings. Like, there's the same amount of daylight or less daylight based on the way that the Earth is tilted toward the sun.
That is astounding as people who think what they post on Facebook is private.
Right. Well, yeah, exactly.
Delete. How do I delete Facebook?
Right.
How do I remove this post where I posted this very inappropriate picture of bedroom activities?
Daylight saving time is, in the fall we call it National Be an Hour Early to Church Day.
Yeah, that's right.
And in the spring we call it National Sleep Through Sunday School Day.
Yeah, right.
I like both of those better than the things that I called them.
Right. Well, so this is actually the history, in the United States at least, of daylight savings. So it was started by the Axis powers in World War I and very quickly adopted by the Allies. But the United States did not adopt it until 1918. But it was so unpopular that Congress overturned it in 1919, despite a veto by Woodrow Wilson. Then they overturned his veto.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Who, how everybody knows how we feel about Woodrow Wilson, one of the worst presidents of all time.
But then, one of, probably the...
I would say him or FDR are the worst. But FDR comes back into play.
Well, see, Wilson believed.
Right.
Apparently, Roosevelt was much more of a shenanigans guy. We're just like, whatever we can do to get these things passed.
Mm-hmm. That's true. Woodrow Wilson was a true believer.
And
the results of a lot of his policies caused the deaths of millions of people.
You have to decide which is worse, though. Somebody who does terrible things that they actually believe in, or somebody who does terrible things because they think they're pulling the wool over your something.
Well, and as Walter Williams says, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, but he says no, it's a superhighway. So a few localities in 1919 kept it, including the most liberal state of Massachusetts, one of the most liberal states. Rhode Island kept it, New York City kept it, Philadelphia kept it, and Chicago kept it. Then in 1942, by U.S. dictator FDR, it was reinstituted by fiat as wartime. Then the wartime provisions expired in 1945 and were not renewed. But again, lots of localities kept it, and it made things very, very confusing. And so there was a couple of attempts, like one in 1966, to kind of unify time and establish time zones, because most localities just went off the railroad time zones. Mm-hmm. But there was no official time zone or daylight savings time until 1974, when Nixon, by fiat, declared that everybody would be using daylight savings time, and approved an act from Congress called the Emergency Daylight Savings and Time Energy Conservation Act.
Except for Arizona, who said,
well, they later on...
In Hawaii.
Yeah. Well, Hawaii, they later on rejected it and got rid of it. But, so the idea, though, in the 1970s, they did studies, and they were like, well, if we do this, the United States will save 1% nationally on energy. And that was what how they passed it or whatever. However, the facts say something different.
Well, and remember, when Bush changed the day that it happened, they did it to save 800 million barrels of oil or something like that.
Yeah, something.
Which then turned out to be completely
right.
Did it change that day?
Yeah,
but it wasn't.
It was during
effect.
It was during his administration that it was.
I was thinking it was much more recently that happened.
Yeah.
Well, but I think it didn't take effect until maybe it took effect immediately. I don't know. But this didn't come up in my research. So in 1970s, research was done, and they determined that it would save 1% nationally. Mm-hmm. However, more recent research has been done, and it says that it costs 1% nationally, between 1 and 2% nationally, to implement it. Now, they say that there may be a difference between the 1970s and now, because AC is so much more prominent than it was in the 70s. A lot of places just didn't have AC in the 70s. Did you have AC when you were growing up, Mom?
Yes.
Oh, you did? Okay, so she was rich. But yeah, they say it just because AC and then the introduction of CFL lighting and LED lighting, it has reduced a lot of the energy consumption. So when you're shifting shifting the time, it costs energy use in other areas. So one of the areas that it causes a lot of energy consumption is that it causes a 17% increase on that first Monday in traffic. Mm-hmm. And so that is a lot of people using fuel in traffic. There's also they're estimating that over a 60-year... Now, this is interesting because this was a study was done in 2007. Most of my clocks will self-adjust. Mm-hmm. But in 2007, they did a study, and they said that on average, over a 60-year period, Americans will spend 20 hours of their life adjusting their clock to account for daylight savings time, which causes like a 5% reduction on that day in productivity, which somehow like accounts for a increase in energy uses. Like they did this whole like thing about it where it's in the Mises article. If you guys want to go to the Mises.com and just look up daylight savings, they have several articles or .org.
Energy was expended in that study.
Yeah, I don't know, but
it's a good question.
And then Mises quoted the New York Times that it also costs an average of $434 million annually to adjust the clocks each time.
Yeah.
So
because you're thinking of like all the digital clocks.
Right.
But like my television has a daylight savings mode.
Right.
It's a smart TV. It's plugged into the internet. Mm-hmm. It could just ping the server from Cox, our service provider, and determine what it is. It's a Samsung television.
Right.
So like I don't think Korea does daylight savings time. But, like, super simple for this TV, but I still have to go in and manually tell it
change it.
That, oh, this has changed. And then when I was the house I was born into, my parents sold, since you've known me.
Yeah.
Like,
well, I remember they were renting it out when we first met.
Exactly. And then, so then I've lived in, like, with my parents, we only lived in 2 houses. Uh-huh. So the second house, like, at some point, like, my mom decided, like, I had graduated to the point of getting my own self up. For school. So she like bought me a radio alarm clock so like I could put on the radio or something like that instead of beep. So it was, I still have that in my living room. And that thing's like no daylight savings time mode for that. Right. So like every time the time changes or the power goes out, I have to go adjust it.
Yeah, or you think about like I have to adjust my car. My car doesn't adjust on its own.
Which is
I don't
insane.
bother to adjust my car. I just know what time it is, so I either add or subtract an hour. But then what happens is the next time Dad drives my car, he adjusts it, but doesn't tell me.
Oh, right.
Classic dad move.
Yeah. Well, we also used to do this, speaking of adjusting the time of the car, we also used to have the car time 10 minutes earlier or something like that.
Every clock, and Dad did that too.
So that
we adjust our clocks 10 minutes or 20 minutes ahead. So
so that we would always be earlier on time to things. But then you just kind of adjust your thinking. You're like, we've got time because we're 10 minutes early.
Yeah. I am compulsively early to everything.
I try to be, and it doesn't always work out as I look over at Victoria. But she's been getting much better.
What a sweet, loving look that was.
Yeah. So on to Dr. Matt Walker, who then talks about the health ramifications of this. Mm-hmm. So interestingly, and this corresponds with traffic, 17% increase in traffic fatalities the Monday after which probably is the reason why there's so much more traffic, the Monday after the change. 21% increase in cardiovascular related deaths the day after, the Monday after it's changed, if it's changed forward, or if you lose an hour. If you gain an hour, 21% decrease in cardiovascular
my understanding was that, like, in the places that had daylight savings time, like, when the time changed and until the time changed back, you were at greater risk of a cardiovascular event in general.
Yeah, so I'll get into a little bit of this this episode of Rogan was super interesting, and this guy, Dr. Matt Walker, he's dedicated his entire life to sleep studies, and he's the I think he says he's the sleep diplomat or something like that. Like he's kind of here to like he believes that there's a ton of chronic issues in the United States and Western Europe that could be solved with just people getting 8 hours of sleep.
Is he the one whose book was in the tent of the Arab guy that was captured or something, and they went in there and the Arab prince or something had his book in the tent, and they said, "What do you think of that he had your book?" And he said, "Well, I guess everybody has to sleep."
Yeah, I don't know. That's possible. Yeah.
You know what? I should have looked that up before when you told me this is what you're talking about.
I didn't know.
I just now remembered that I'd read something about that or something somewhere.
Well, so this guy, Dr. Matt Walker, he says that just losing 1 hour of sleep, so like Rogan really grilled him on this. He's like, well, what about those people who say they can sleep for 5 hours a night and be functional? He says there are a lot. He says if you take the number of people who can function on 5 hours of sleep, and he says we can study this. We can scan your brain and see what's going on. So function the same way they would function on 8 hours of sleep, like as efficiently. The number of people who can do that, if you take that as a percentage of the population and round up or down, like if it's 51%, you round up. If it's 51 down, he says that percentage of the U.S. population is 0. So he says anybody who says that they can function correctly on 6 hours or 5 hours of sleep is wrong. They can function, and there are people who can function. They do not function at as high of a threshold or whatever, which is interesting. And I may suggest this to my new employer because he does Fitbit bonuses. Mm-hmm. So instead of it just being walking bonuses, I was thinking that because it's such a huge increase in productivity for people who sleep a full 8 hours, is maybe you should start incentivizing people to record on their Fitbit a incentive for sleeping for 7.5 or 8 hours. Because he says 99.999% of Americans must sleep between 7.5 and 9 hours to be fully functional. And it's cumulative. So he says like as you accumulate more, it becomes worse, and there's no paying the debt back. So he says like you got to just start right away. And he says like it happens, like you do lose it, but you are accumulating low level brain damage when you are not getting enough sleep. And so he says, anyways, just disrupting your circadian rhythm by 1 hour. And he says it goes either way, because if you get a little bit more, you're just disrupting the circadian rhythm. And so many people go like, oh, well, I got an extra hour to sleep tomorrow. I'll stay up an hour later tonight, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, and I've done this. Like, I've had this exact same thought process, going like, oh, tomorrow's daylight savings, I'll just stay up an hour later. But he says that like, so clinically, like a dramatic increase in the risk of depression, an increase in anxiety, increased chance of getting type 2 diabetes, like a 30% increased chance of getting cancer, very high increase in heart attack, high increase in stroke, high increase in the misdiagnosis of ADHD and ADD. Because he says if you look at the symptoms of sleep deprivation, they're almost the exact same as ADHD and ADD. So, and one of his theories is that the reason that there's an overprescription of ADD and ADHD medicine in the United States is because, and he says they've shown this clinically, is that high schools and stuff, they start at about 7:45 on a national average, which he says is depriving a lot of students of a full 8 hours of sleep. He says they've tried this in clinical trials in I think Michigan, where they just moved it to 8:45 start time. And there was a 200-point increase in their SAT scores on average. Mm-hmm. That's a huge increase on SAT scores. There was a overall like 23% increase in average grades, a huge decrease in behavioral problems amongst high schoolers, and just general, and also a 17% decrease in traffic fatalities involving high schoolers, because they're inexperienced drivers, but they're also driving on lack of sleep.
Yeah, and this is so funny because, like, you've known me for a long time, and, like, I was always the guy who, like, didn't get a lot of sleep, but couldn't sleep.
Right.
Now, there's a lot to go into, like, had I had, like, this guy available to talk to and be like, what am I doing wrong?
Right.
And,
well,
like,
so he actually gives
like, a lot of drop-off stuff.
He gives a lot of really interesting recommendation. Like, one of the things that he recommends is wearing gloves and socks to sleep. So he says, like, if your hands are warm and your feet are warm, you will fall asleep faster and sleep more soundly, because it will encourage your body to push blood to the surface and cool your core temperature down, which will help you fall asleep faster.
So my feet are always too hot when I sleep.
Oh, really?
Do you have any recommendation for that?
I don't know. He says that you should be sleeping at about 66 degrees.
That definitely keeps me awake at night.
Yeah. I
always got to kick my feet up.
I sleep with like more blankets than anything.
Yes, I mean, since my mom's been in town, I've been sleeping in Victoria's bed, and it's just too hot for me. Like, I've got to sleep like almost in the nude. I just have like a sheet covering my midsection or whatever, because I need the weight of the sheet. But
so I have the sheet, a knitted blanket, down comforter, and until 2 weeks ago, a thick blanket that happened to have Mickey Mouse's face on it.
Yeah.
And then 2 white throw blankets and the quilt my aunt that you saw like at my wedding that my aunt gave me, like she made it, my wife and I, a quilt, but like we have that on there, so like it's the weight, but like I can't be like, I can almost not be warm enough while sleeping. It's so weird.
Yeah. So
what's your room temperature like?
We have the house about 73 at this point, but like,
see, we keep our house super, super cold on purpose.
Yeah.
Because we like to have blankets on us.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing with
Except that I can't sleep covered.
See, I like my room to be about 66 and just a sheet.
Yeah, that's about what we have. Our room's about 66, but we have more than a sheet.
Well, like, the part of the problem is, I'm pretty sure the people who owned the house before us skimped out a size on the air conditioning unit.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So, like, it just gets to a point where it's just so annoying that the air conditioning is on for so long. And plus, our house is, like, the main core of the house is built in, like, 37.
Okay.
So it's not as well insulated.
Speaking of which, I was windows open if it's nice out.
But, we also live so close to the highway. There's a lot of highway noise still. But, like, I was under my house part of this weekend. because I went to war with the ants that had been
yeah. So okay, let me finish the last three problems. So the other one is, and I think we actually covered this: decrease in academic performance, decrease in work performance. Mm-hmm. So like one of the things that he points out is not malpractice, but like when there's medical accidental death, is he says. So one of the things that he points out is he says that like doctors are expected to work these very long shifts at emergency rooms, and also people who are doing their residency are expected to work these ridiculously long shifts. And the idea is cohesion, like being able to see the same patient for a long period of time. Yeah. Now he says that's the excuse that they give, but it's mostly like the good old boys. He says it's the good old boys problem. It's the higher up saying, well, I had to do this, so you have to do this. Yeah. And he says it's all started with I can't remember the doctor's name, but at Mayo Clinic or something like that. He's the first one who did a residency program, and he was notorious for being able to stay awake for like 4 days and only sleep like 4 hours and then get back to work. And he expected all of his residents to keep up with him. Yeah. Turns out he also is one of the first ones who discovered local anesthetic. What was his local anesthetic?
Cocaine.
Exactly. He was also heavily addicted to cocaine.
So he was Sigmund Freud.
Yeah, basically. He was on cocaine all the time. So he was always like, you guys got to do it. Let's go, 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 go kind of thing. And so he would be getting these guys, all these residents, to work his crazy shifts, and like some of them would die, like have heart attacks and die. Yeah. And it was because they were staying awake for 4 days at a time because he was on cocaine, staying awake for 4 days at a time.
So the meth heads were his
basically
ideal people.
Yeah. So he's the one who started this, and it's carried forward. But he says that when there are some, like New Zealand actually is the one that started doing this, where they have said that you can. These are weird government regulations. I don't agree with this. I think that this is something that hospitals should institute. Is we want a higher quality of health provided, which means you should only be working a 7-hour shift. And if you are not getting 8 hours of sleep, and nowadays we can record this. We can record this on Fitbits. If you're not getting an 8-hour sleep, then you are not working this day. Because the percentage of accidental death caused by people who are underslept is astronomical. It's like 36% or something like that. It's huge. Like this is a lot of death. Now, kind of to bring this back to Tasting Anarchy, this is instituted by the government and enforced by the government. Yeah. And so I would say, and this is the same thing with like road fatalities, if you are enforcing and maintaining the roads, you're responsible for what happens on the road. Mm-hmm. If you're enforcing and maintaining these bizarre hours that I don't know a single person who likes daylight savings. I'm sure there are people. I don't know them. And if you're the one enforcing this and it causes this much damage and this much economic cost, you're responsible for that. And so the government is responsible for every one of these deaths, the overprescription of ADHD and ADD medication, all of this, the increased depression, the increased anxiety, the increased cancer, like all of these things. And if they would just do one very simple thing, stop doing it and stop enforcing it and allow, if localities want to do it, that's, their decision. But I would also advocate that my future home, Dallas, don't do it because it's stupid. And the entire state of Texas, hopefully, and the entire state of Virginia shouldn't do it because it's dumb.
The Commonwealth of Virginia.
Yeah, the Commonwealth of Virginia shouldn't do it because it's stupid. They would save billions of dollars on health costs and billions of dollars in economic and time costs.
Yeah, so this leads me to my favorite complaint about our current work that isn't like the job related.
Right.
So one of the things that drives me nuts is the fact that people constantly talk about the most popular shows, football season, and things like that. And that's one of the things is like the economic impact of daylight savings time is immense, but so is the economic impact of the National Football League. Yeah. Because there is so much productivity lost in the 3 or 4 weeks leading up to football season and the 3 to 4 weeks leading at the end of football season. And not to mention all the productivity you lost in between because people comment on it because it was the most popular thing. Right. So like now that football is incredibly declining in popularity and people like to blame it on like the take a knee thing or whatever, when it's really, no, millennials don't give a crap and everyone else is just too poor to spend a bunch of time watching it anymore. Where, like, I wonder, like, if we can break people of that habit, like, how do we break them of daylight savings time? Like, Arizona was just like, we're not doing it. And then one of the Native American reservations was like, we're doing it. And then a subgroup was like, we're not. Right. And so it's like, this is.
Well, this kind of brings me to one more thing is, we're both anarchists, but I don't really have a problem with running for public office. And I've always thought that, like, maybe someday I'll do it. what do you think about this? I guess this is a what do you think about before we get to my my last article, which will involve Mom and actually it'll involve you because we've all lived in California.
Yes.
So, but
I forgot what that one was.
Oh, okay, that's okay. But I've lost my train of thought. Oh, running for public office. So we both listen to Jason Stapleton, and speaking of California, exactly. He lives in Southern California. I'm really off on Jason Stapleton.
You got to listen to the last episode.
You know what? You know what it is that like I can't get over that he and his wife are divorced. I really like. I don't know why.
Just listen to the last
okay.
episode.
All right, but anyways, so speaking of California, but like if I ever run for public office, and this is kind of a Jason Stapleton thing, is to kind of appease the destinationalists and to sort of appease the incrementalists in the libertarian movement, is I think that what libertarians should do is they should have the platform, which is the destination, and each time a libertarian runs, they should have a goals list. And the goals list is, these are the things I'm going to attempt to do while I'm in office this time.
Larry Sharp.
Yeah, Larry Sharp does this too, and I agree with this. And one of the things I would run on is getting rid of daylight savings.
I see the way I thought
because it's so unpopular.
The way I thought you were going to do this is you were going to run for governor.
Yeah.
And then abolish daylight savings time and resign.
That'd be nice.
Well, I mean, if you did in Texas, like first you would commute all the death sentences, and
that's
then
true. Yeah, I would, because there is a lot of people, and it's not that I'm actually opposed to the death penalty. I'm opposed to the state doing it because I don't trust them.
Well, I'm opposed to the death penalty completely.
I'm not because I believe that the libertarian position on punishment or on justice is not crime and punishment. It's crime and compensation, and the compensation is subjective. And so the victim of the crime should be able to subjectively demand a price. And if the price is death...
But if I stole your gobstopper and you demand death,
right,
because it was the gobstopper that your grandmother gave you before she passed...
Well, there would have to be social norms. And one of the social norms in ours... And even Rothbard talks about this, and so does...
Gobstoppers are everlasting, so you could just...
That's true. Right, there you go.
Yeah. but that first layer you'll never get back.
That's true. But even Rothbard has talked about this, and Bob Murphy too, is that subjective theory of value. But they have also talked about social norms, and one of the norms is and this actually happens in very primitive societies, or what we would consider primitive societies, is that like they have a valuation. So like the death of your daughter is worth 6 cows or whatever, or like, that kind of thing, is that we would have a social norm for what one life is worth. And so like, if you kill this person, then the person who's the victim, which would be the heirs to that person's estate, would be able to demand the equivalent of one life. And so depending on where you lived, it could be the life of the person who committed the crime, or it could be some sort of monetary or property compensation.
Yeah, I can see the subjective value in that, and I can see the argument.
Yeah,
I still can't get there.
Well, the only reason I wouldn't get there is because in theory I agree with this. I don't agree with the state doing it because the state is wrong all the time.
Yeah.
And they make so many mistakes. Actually, there's a guy in Louisiana right now who's been in jail for the last 9 years and hasn't been charged yet. And
there's the kid who killed himself after being in Rikers for 5.5 years and was never charged.
Right. Yeah. And this guy I think he's in Louisiana, who hasn't been charged for 7 or 8 years. They were going to release him because he finally petitioned and said that this is a violation of my constitutional right to a fair and speedy trial or whatever.
Yeah.
And then they were about to release him, and then they charged him for not paying a traffic ticket
while he was in prison.
Yeah, that was from before he was in prison, and they're like, "Well, you haven't paid this all this time," and it's like, I haven't been out of prison to make the money to pay it, and they're like, "Yep, too late. Sorry, now you owe like $10,000 or whatever because of the accumulated interest, and fees and
somehow that's the thing is like, I don't like if you take someone's life, like, so putting all religious arguments aside, right, like you take somebody's life, like the subjective value and like cultural norms and things like that. I've never believed in cultural norms, like, because that to me is like one of those excuses for bad behavior.
Sure.
It was cultural norms to burn people at the stake. I'm sorry. Like, that's insanity.
Yeah.
Like, taking the life of somebody else isn't justified. Now, like, in a situation where, like, somebody's about to stab you in the face and then you end up accidentally killing the person in attempts to save your own life, I don't disagree with the fact that that happened. Would I attempt to mitigate those circumstances? Like, if that was happening to me, most likely. Now, if they threaten my child, I'm killing that person. I don't care. Like, that's the measure of it's like, so if I say that, like, subjective value, life for life, eye for an eye sort of thing, who's doing it?
Right.
who's holding the person down, because then, to me, that leads you to legal obligations if you're the one holding the person down, and unless the person who's demanding the life is taken is shooting them in the back of the head or whatever the most humane way of taking this person out, there's no, like, you can't build a mousetrap that makes this work.
Yes, you can. And here's how it works. You got to read Bob Murphy's Chaos Theory.
Okay.
So this is the way that it would work is, and kind of is it really sucks actually, but like, it's kind of like the last, like, sort of like the last straw taken or whatever, like, you know, so it's basically, so the court doesn't authorize the death of this person, but what the court authorizes is that he is a murderer and his protections of rights have been removed, which then propagates through all the insurance companies. The insurance companies all say, this guy can't be on your property. And so it goes like, each one says he can't be on your property, and when it gets to the last person, you say you can't be on my property because of my insurance coverage, and if you don't get off, I have to kill you, or my insurance company is going to have to kill you, and at that point he has nowhere else to go and he has to die. So
I understand the concept,
because also the prisons won't accept him because their insurance won't cover it. So like lower crimes, the prisons. So this is what's the difference in anarchy between positive. So the government is a positive enforcer of law. In anarchy, it's a negative enforcer of law. So you're not positively taking action. You're negatively removing protection. Yeah. So,
but that's where, from a business perspective, if it's Bill Gates,
sure,
there is an insurance company that's going to insure him,
and maybe, and it'll slowly. Well, the thing is, though, Bill Gates is rich, but you look at MetLife; they're richer than Bill Gates.
They are, but they aren't,
and so
they don't have as much functional. They have more assets, but their assets are bound. Bill Gates'
their assets are bound, but they're also reliant on other people doing business with them. And if there's interlocking agreements of contract, the contracts all have to be enforced in order for people to do business.
Correct.
And so there will be now, Bill Gates may be able to avoid it. And the idea is that, well, he has the property rights on this, deserted island or whatever, and he goes in exile, kind of like Napoleon had to go to that
Corsica.
island, in the middle of the Atlantic, which apparently was awful.
Well, no, Corsica is where I know.
So. But it was sort of a similar situation where they didn't want to kill him. But so in the Bill Gates case, there would be a cascading series of interlocking contracts, and he would be exiled to his private island in the middle of wherever. But the thing is that once you're there, is nobody's doing business with you. You can survive and live out your days or whatever. But and you maybe have time to make amends because like it sucks to be out there, so you might want to make amends and come back to the mainland or whatever. But the idea is that it is subjective. And the libertarian justice or the anarchist justice is making the victim as whole as possible. So if you killed, my wife or my mom or, one of my siblings or whatever, I'm not forgiving you anytime soon. But although my religion says that I do need to forgive you, it takes time, and it's difficult. It's going to be a difficult thing to work out. And in the moment, I may say, I demand your death. But and this is the other problem I have with state justice is that state justice doesn't allow me to forgive. Yeah. So as like a dedicated Christian, I should be allowed to forgive something if they commit a crime against me. But in our current justice system, it's not a crime against me. It's a crime against the state.
Yeah.
And the state supposedly represents me, even though I've never voted for somebody who won, and I've never given them the authority over my life. Like I have one authority over my life as a Christian, and that's God and Christ or whatever, that sort of thing. And this justice system is a violation of my constitutional rights, which isn't. The Constitution protects my rights. That's not where I get my rights. But
Constitution protects your rights from the federal government.
From the federal government, so
not the state government.
It doesn't. That's true. But the idea is that these are inherent rights. I have a right to this religious belief. My religious belief says that if somebody commits a crime against me, I should be allowed to forgive them. And I should forgive them, and the state does not allow me to do that. Is they take it into their hands to imprison them?
Well, the state, and that's the
and then they punish me twice because then I have to pay for them to be imprisoned.
Yeah, and that's the slippery slope version of the argument because the state says, well, you still can forgive them, but you can't forgive them of the punishment, and that's what the ultimate. Yeah.
Well, but my religion also says that revenge is God's, not mine.
Well, and
but God also says that He forgives, but you still have to face consequences.
Well, they're not my consequences to give. Yes. They're somebody else's. But
but
the state. But then also, if I elect members of the state to do this, I'm causing them to sin because they're taking revenge into their hands
by enforcing the system. Yeah, I agree, and I agree with that entire concept. But that's kind of my thing with part of my problem with the libertarian position because this guy commits a murder, and it's the only time somebody's murdered in this chain of events.
Right.
But you've been doing these other terrible things to him, So, but then because he's committed this murder, now there's the judgment. Now that causes my insurance company to go against this guy, this cascade and falling event where I can't be like, no, I looked at the situation. While I am an atheist, I am as close to the things that Christ talked about, make the most sense to me outside of the religious, go to heaven thing, the forgiveness being not taking revenge against people. I can definitely see a situation where I would go and take revenge, but then I'd be like, yeah, every consequence that is of that, yes, I'm going to hide from the state, but I'm not going to hide from the people who I actually did the crime against.
Sure.
But that's where that in the libertarian sense takes my ability to be like, no, I don't agree with this punishment. And it takes it out of my hand because now all of a sudden I can't do business with this guy. And it's like, well, you were molesting his children.
Sure.
And he shot you and you happen to have died.
Right.
His goal was to simply cripple you and then pay the economic consequence. He was going to do that. Now I've got to starve him to death. Yeah. Which I'm unwilling to do because when I was in.
Well, but see, that's the thing is I think if you read Bob Marley's Chaos Theory, it kind of explains it a little bit, is that as the policy holder, your heirs. So if you die in the process of this or whatever, your heirs get to not errors, but
your heirs.
Get to decide the process of this because they are the inheritors of your justice.
Correct.
But because justice is a property right.
But that's the problem is I lose the ability to exercise my property rights to maintain this person's life because of your execution of justice.
No, because he denied you your right to life. That's why he's also removed.
I'm third party.
Oh,
I'm third party. It's my uncle has committed a crime against you.
Okay.
Your mother has decided he's going to starve to death through this chain of systems. I've decided, no, I'm not willing from a Christ-like position to allow this person to starve to death. Now I lose my insurance and then I become person non grata.
Right.
And then I have to be starved to death because no one can do business with me.
Oh, right.
Because, it's not, and I would love to hear Bob's response to this because I know that there is a reasoned response that we don't necessarily know, but that removes my ability to act in a Christ-like fashion.
Sure.
Which, even though I'm not religious, that is an important thing to me. Is I drive by the same person begging every day, and she's wearing different clothes.
Right.
Which leads me to believe she's not homeless.
Okay.
I've driven past people where they aren't wearing the same clothes. They are definitely wearing the same clothes every day. Yeah. And they definitely have everything on a bicycle.
Yeah.
And I've given that person something because I'm like, yeah, you might be a drug addict. I don't think that's a problem. You want to do drugs, that's fine. But the person who's standing there in a different outfit every day and it's a seasonal appropriate dress. Sure. It's I'm sorry, you can at least change your clothes.
Right.
You can do something other than beg. I don't think it's wrong that you're begging.
Sure.
I'm just not giving you any money. If people think that's appropriate, hey, that's fine. It's like Patreon. People that's a form of begging. I don't have a problem with that.
Right.
But my problem with the concept is now I've lost my ability to act in a specific way.
Right.
I from a charity standpoint, I don't think anybody should starve to death.
Right.
And we have the means in this world to ensure no one starves to death.
Well, the government impedes those means. So
there are many different things impede that means. Government is the main driver of that. But that's my problem with that style of justice. And there's probably good descriptors, good explanations against it and things like that. But that's my problem is I've now been forced to act in a way that I don't want, just the same way as the government does.
Yeah.
Because I have to maintain an insurance policy.
Well, see, I think it's different than the way the government does, is because in a cascading result of interlocking contracts or whatever, they're all voluntary. Whereas when the government does it, it's not voluntary. It's just they're like, well, we have more guns and we're going to force you to do it.
Correct.
So the idea being that your insurance company removes their insurance because you want to protect your uncle. Well, you agreed to the policy that the insurance company provided, and theoretically you knew that. Well,
this was a consequence laid out in the policy that if you person non grata, if you I agree.
And the thing is that one of the things that I like about the anarchist perspective is that in our current situation, and this will lead into our next topic. so much of our life is a result of our expectation of what the state does. Correct. So, and this causes major market distortion. So, like one of the very first things that we talked about on the show was roads. Mm-hmm. And so roads, great. You know, I can get around and stuff, and that's awesome. Despite the fact that there's potholes everywhere and that they do a very poor job maintaining them, you know, it's great to be able to get around. Is it the best way to get around? Well, that's
subjective.
It is subjective. It's also, not only is it subjective, it's very difficult to know. You can know what is, and it's very difficult to know what could have been. So this is sort of like opportunity cost.
It's not sort of.
Well, it is.
It is exactly opportunity cost.
So, you know, let's say that they spend, you know, $100 million or whatever on the road. Yeah, it's great that you can get from, you know, Virginia Beach to the middle of nowhere. Sure. You know, you might want to go out there and go hiking or all that sort of stuff. But is that the most productive use of that $100 million? Or like in Seattle, we were talking about that last week, is they budgeted for $870,000 per mile.
Per bike lane mile.
Per bike lane mile, and it ended up costing $13 million per bike lane mile. Was that $13 million per bike lane mile better used to build those bike lanes, or would that $13 million per bike lane mile have been better used to like help the enormous amount of homeless people that are in Seattle, which also Seattle causes that problem by their other laws?
See, that was what I was going to say. Is that $13 million wouldn't have been well spent on those homeless people, because they were sitting there with the fact that they have a $15 minimum wage, and these people don't command $15 in the market.
That's true. Yeah. And see, this may have been a better than solution, is just to let the Seattleites keep the money. Now, granted, a lot of the issue here is that, and this has to do with problems with the federal government as well, that a lot of this $13 million are federal funds that are then given to the state.
So it's my money.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there are a lot of it's federal funds.
Actually, no. So, correction. It's your mother's great-grandchildren's money, since it's all borrowed.
That's true.
And we're not actually paying it.
Yeah, right. And mom's nodding her head.
So
that's true.
So it's my daughter's children's money.
Yeah, exactly. So
Thanks.
this kind of gets
Seattle.
into... This kind of gets into the same sort of situation, is that this is sort of in the new California solar panel law for new homes. Mm-hmm. So I did a little bit of research on this just because it's something else I wanted to talk about, and it kind of plays into this whole idea of market distortions, and the distortions have a lot of unintended consequences that kind of go down the line. And my mom and I talked a little bit about this before. She brought up some interesting points that I wrote down these. I wrote down these points as well. So one of the things so I said, you know, there's this problem with, you know, so anyways, for those of you who don't know, California has passed a new law. The new law says that
it's not a new law.
It's a new regulation from not their EPA, but their Energy Commission.
So it's not a law. It's a fiat.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
It is a rule by commission of unelected officials.
Yeah, bureaucrats.
And it's not like it's judges.
Right.
Because like there's a concept of judiciary. Mm-hmm. This is a executive branch of the state of California that is legislating from the pulpit of progressivism.
Yeah. So let me
Governor Moonbeam.
That's right. Yeah. Well, hopefully he's going to be gone soon, but then it's going to be San Francisco Gavin Newsom. Newsom, who's probably going to be worse.
Unless Travis Allen or John Cox somehow miraculously.
And maybe like
I'm betting.
Let's hope for the state split.
I think it's going to be someone completely unexpected in California.
So California actually has a really interesting way, because you need a plurality to win. And there's actually a really strong libertarian candidate.
I think the San Francisco guy, there's some skeletons in his closet that are going to come out that are like Trump-level weirdness, where it's just...
I don't know. There was plenty of skeletons in Jerry Brown's, too.
That's true.
But that's the thing, is like after Schwarzenegger,
right?
They could only go to Brown because they're just like, we need somebody we knew.
Right.
I think the guy from San Francisco has burned a lot of bridges within the state and pissed LA off. And I don't think LA is going to stand behind
Well, and actually, the libertarian candidate's from LA. So, and I really like and also he's black.
Who is the libertarian
I have to look it up. He's black too, so like maybe he could play on the heartstrings of the Californians.
No, because any black conservatives or libertarians.
Yeah, that's true. They're all Uncle Toms. Yeah. So let me go ahead and read the summary real quick of the law. So the law is that new single-family homes and multifamily buildings of 3 stories or less must come prefabricated with solar panels to take effect in 2020. So that's the law, or the fiat. Now, there are some exceptions. The exceptions are that smaller homes or homes that are in shaded or with shaded roofs are exempt from this, but they must come up with equivalent energy saving policies in the house. Mm-hmm. So that's the exception. So the exception that mom brought this up when we were talking about it, she said, "Oh, I'm sure there's loopholes that people can get around." And there are. The loopholes are that you have to come up with equivalent energy savings, which, according to the article I read, including the equivalent savings, that would average to an increase in home prices of $10,500. Now, the Energy Commission says, doesn't matter, because the average home price in California is $530,000. So as a percentage of the home price, not a big deal. And besides, inflation in the United States is high enough that that's only 1 year's worth of inflation in home prices. So,
and you're also going to save $19,500 in energy costs.
Actually, they say $16,000.
Oh, Jason was wrong.
$16,500 over 30 years.
Over 30 years. Yeah.
Now, the national average of a home is $269,000. The Texas average of a home, $157,000 in a state that's very unregulated as far as building concerns. Mm-hmm. Now, this
Which
part...
is $40,000.
Buy your home soon.
I know.
No.
Right.
You want to buy your home in 2 years.
Right. After the collapse?
In August, the interest rates are going to spike like crazy.
Oh.
And then the market's just going to go bananas.
Okay. So our plan is to start saving. Texas
is going to skyrocket.
Right.
And then it's going to drop off when people are like, I don't want to live in Texas because they're not flipping blue.
Yeah. Okay. That's true. Yeah. So anyway, so I went over this, that the regulator said, well, basically you'll save that money over 30 years. Mm-hmm. The Reason article that I read about this, Reason says, yeah, but if you put $10,500 in a 401k over 30 years, you're going to be making like $60,000, whereas you're only going to be making $16,500 over the 30-year period when you're recovering the cost.
And you're not making that because what it doesn't include is the fact that solar panels get more efficient every year.
Sure.
They break down all the time. Mm-hmm. The cleaning cost of them, it's not, you're not spending the $9,500, which is the projected cost of the panels.
Right.
And that's it.
Right.
That it's not.
It's a maintenance cost over time. Yeah.
And this is though, a lot of times if you go get solar panels now, the panels actually belong to the company, and they're responsible
that's like Solar City does.
Yeah,
and keep them up. So, what does California have a?
It doesn't. The article does not say
it has to be part of the homeowners thing.
The article doesn't say. So it may be that it's not included in the house. It may be that it's something you rent.
I don't think they're smart enough to have done that.
Yeah,
to be honest, because Elon Musk wasn't pushing this initiative, and he owns most of Solar City.
Sure.
And there are several companies where that was the goal, was to create a distributed power network.
Yeah.
Which was my idea the entire time, but doing it through schools.
Yeah.
Because most schools aren't shaded, stupidly. So their energy costs are
and they have
crazy.
Big flat roofs.
And they're flat, and then half the year they're not cooling the entire school.
Right.
So during the hottest months, you could just be dumping power. Mm-hmm. And especially if you could do batteries, contain batteries on the roof for
or like
summertime,
or like kinetic energy storage, which I've always thought was like a good idea. Is that because generally you don't need at the high points of energy production for solar and wind, because when it's hot, that's when most of the wind is. Because it creates high pressure systems. But is that if you store the kinetic, this has always been my idea to gyp the system or whatever, is that you build gigantic piston, what do they call them, aquifer piston systems, and you store the energy during low energy cost times, and then you sell the energy at high. But then I found out that the law is that
most do blended rates.
They do blended rates, exactly. So so you don't get
there is no advantage.
Yeah. So. But anyways, kind of going back to the article. So the regulators argue that, you're going to save the money over the 30-year period, but they don't take into account things like opportunity costs. So and also they don't take into account that over a 30-year period, technology is going to increase, and your I think the most right now is 23% efficient solar panels. I think that's the highest.
I believe there are panels with higher efficiency.
Yeah.
But the cost is astronomical.
Right. So I know that the holy grail of solar efficiency is 73% efficient, which the only thing that reaches close to that efficiency right now is evacuated solar tubes,
which are awesome.
Which are really cool. Yeah. And those are used for heating water. So you can basically boil water in them, but the problem is that if you're not using the water, it's boiled and it's hot, and then that's it.
That's the thing is like, and you and I don't disagree with this, but heat to Stirling to like there are a bunch of things that could be done.
Yeah, you could do high efficiency Stirling
mechanical advantage,
and they'll just run. Or my other idea that I've been talking about a lot lately is using evacuated solar tubes to increase the temperature differential between OTEC technology. Is that you've got about I think about 150 feet below the surface of the ocean,
and these are flip ships basically.
Yeah, flip ship idea. Yeah, so you flip ship it. You've got the bottom of the flip ship is down in the 60s. Well, if you put evacuated solar tubes on the top side, you can increase the temperature differential by several hundred degrees, and then you can use ammonia to push to turn the turbine, and then cool it very quickly, and you could generate electricity that way. So these I feel like they don't use evacuated solar tubes as efficiently as they could.
They don't use Stirling engines as efficiently as they could.
Well, like NASA even uses Stirling engines on the spacecraft. They use like depleted uranium, which generates heat, to turn the Stirling engine.
Yeah.
Because they don't need a lot of high demand energy. They just need it to slowly generate energy over time. Yeah. So that's one of the many ideas of Jacob is like you use OTEC. There's hundreds and hundreds of gigawatts of energy in the ocean that's not being used.
Or the Great Lakes.
Yeah, or the Great Lakes or anything like that.
Probably endangers the dolphins.
It might endanger the dolphins or starfish or whatever, but
that's
at the same time...
You do it in the Great Lakes to wipe out the carp.
Right, there you go. Yeah, you do that. So anyways, back to the Reason article is Reason kind of reasonably goes through things that you can do they say these are a couple of things that could also decrease the cost of energy in California. So California, one of the things that they could do is other policy steps that would reduce energy consumption and lower the cost of housing in California, which California has almost it's a little more than twice the cost on average nationally. So decrease the cost of housing is to repeal land use zoning laws and increase the availability of more energy efficient multifamily energy inefficient, so single family or energy inefficient homes. So they basically say like reducing the number of single family homes and making them more multifamily. And so here's their reasoning on that is they say San Francisco is 49% single family homes, which causes people
Holy moly.
Yeah. Which causes people, and they're not connected homes.
Yeah.
So
they're single family
single family disconnected homes. So this encourages people to move out to the suburbs, and that increases fuel going into San Francisco to work.
But they can take the BART.
They could take the BART, which we talked about that recently. We want. All of us love the BART.
We take the BART. Remember when
that's
right. We went out there and we got.
We
couldn't take the rental car.
Right.
I absolutely love the BART.
Yeah.
I don't just the novelty of it.
Yeah.
I don't like what the BART represents.
Right. Yeah.
Well, if you go to Atlanta, you can take the MARTA.
That's true.
Yeah.
Well, and they also like what in Dallas it's the DART. But for those of you who don't know, my mom's name is Marta. Tide, which is second in the country for the least efficient.
Hawaii is probably number one.
No, Arizona has the least efficient light rail.
Why is this not complete?
Right. Well, apparently,
it's burning up in the volcano now.
Right, that's true.
Wrong island, but
right.
Well, close enough.
So San Francisco. So what has happened with San Francisco's is that it has caused people to move out to places like San Jose and actually Stockton, where you used to live. So in San Jose, 75% of the houses are single family homes, disconnected.
But San Jose is a sprawling metroplex. San Jose is like as Dallas as you can be in California.
Yeah.
Like literally, you want to build 1,000 homes right there? Go ahead. No one cares. It's just garbage land.
Well,
it's San Jose.
But the reason a lot of those places are doing that is because it's people who commute to some of
they commute. They want the tax bracket to remain.
Right.
They want people who are making $1 million at Google to keep living in San Jose.
Right. And then LA is 57% single family homes.
Which is surprising.
Yeah, that is surprising.
Is that LA County?
LA County, yeah.
75%. LA County is only 51%. Like
75%.
Well, 75?
Single family.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry, 57%.
Yeah, 57%. Like, LA County, if you told me LA County was 95% single family homes, I'd be like, yeah, of course, because LA County is it's massive compared to LA itself.
Right, proper. Well, and this is what they're saying is that if you just repealed the zoning laws and allowed people to build multifamily homes on the same property, you could bring the population in a little more concentrated, and you would save a lot of the fuel costs of commute. But
you wouldn't get that gas tax.
Dianne Feinstein, when she was mayor of San Francisco, was very much opposed to this because she's like, oh, well, it removes the charm of San Francisco and like the old Victorian homes.
San Francisco is so charming right now.
Right, yeah, it is. And honestly, like,
you watch during the 60s, it was so charming when everybody was freezing to death on the streets because they were drugged up homeless morons.
Well, that's only one section. My parents actually lived in San Francisco in the 60s, but they
they chose not to live in the heat, which is a great decision.
More the 50s. I'm sorry, Jacob.
I don't think it was San Francisco, was it? It was.
Well, I think they moved in the late 50s.
Oh, yeah,
if you don't,
they moved out to Santa Rosa.
Yeah,
Santa Rosa.
If you like not to live in the hate, it was okay.
Yeah. We actually went to San Francisco a lot, and it was a fun place to go.
I really like San Francisco.
Well, who just did that study that in a 46 block area or something they had like over 1,000 used hypodermic needles, human excrement.
Well, that's actually a lot of that's on the BART because they won't the BART, it opens up and they allow all these homeless people to come in and shoot up. And I guess they're homeless, but like that's like the safe place to shoot up. But they also are like pooping in buckets and leaving the buckets out everywhere.
Well, and on the street.
Yeah.
And animals as well, and just trash and garbage.
I still love San Francisco.
The city is ruined.
It does have there is a charm to San Francisco, but it's like it's
human excrement is not a great charm.
No, it's not. And it's
use hypodermic needles.
Well, I mean, if you're 1.5, it's okay. Oh, you pooped, you're a baby. Yeah, let's get you cleaned up.
Right, but it is. It's a big problem, and this is the thing is that California thinks that this type of thing is going to make them appealing, and right now, so I talking to my new boss and stuff like that. He was from Utah, but he was telling me about like the amount of companies that are moving to Dallas from California, and it's for this very reason. It's the taxes. It's also because people just don't want to live there anymore, and the only people who live there, and it's hemorrhaging people. And actually, New York is hemorrhaging people too. New York loses 100,000 people. New York City loses 100,000 people a year, and the only people moving into New York City are New Yorkers from other upstate New York.
Yeah,
and actually, I think Larry Sharp talked about this. But
maybe I don't know if I heard
right. But like they're losing 100,000 people a year. California is losing population now because people just are leaving because the taxes are too crazy and there's no housing.
But they're gaining population from the south.
They are, they're gaining Mexicans.
Because they're making up for it.
Oh,
although where are
huge
they all
tax
living?
base.
Yeah, so like
but they're doing what rational people do.
Yeah,
in a housing shortage.
Right,
they live 5-6 people, 1 bedroom.
Yeah,
like they live in conditions that. Like
they're
not living in excrement.
Yeah,
they have a clean house. Like they just have like your apartment like in Soviet Russia would have had 3-4 families living in it, and it wouldn't necessarily have been uncomfortable.
Right,
it wouldn't have been where you would want to live if you could be like, but like you're not shooting crack up in the middle of the street.
That's true. Yeah.
Like and so, like that. So there's a show called Grand Design.
Right.
So. As well, we really haven't gone over your and I's love of Britain,
right?
Like we really like Britain. Like
I like going there.
Like I love going there. Like I love Britain itself. Like I don't like the mayor of London, who's a moron. Like we're gonna outlaw knives.
All right. Okay. Good.
All
luck.
right. Good luck outlawing trucks. Like you idiot. Like So, but there's a show called Grand Designs and. The British version of reality television is so different than the U.S. television because it's mainly about the presenter,
right,
and his interaction with the other people.
Sure.
So on one of the episodes of Grand Design, this lady is been gifted land from a family member, but the local council, so the local communists,
right,
who are this is Class 5 building.
Right.
Where literally they had to design a concrete feature in this house for this person who they're building a house for £100,000, which is, let's call it at the time $200,000. So 90, what was it? The 276,000 was the median house price in the US
of the United States, or just of
the US.
269,000.
So
It's roughly 270.
Yeah, so let's just pretend it was 100,000 pounds.
Right.
And it was roughly that.
Yeah.
Which is about 200,000. Like, let's just
a little
pretend
less,
it was a time when it was double the pound to the dollar. So $200,000 home. This lady, single mother, like, didn't make a lot of money.
Right.
She's got it, and like, she literally had to build a solar concrete wall in her house that would face a certain direction to absorb the morning sun in Britain.
Yeah.
In Britain. It's not like it's LA. You're like, like, no, it's in Britain, and like, to absorb the sun to heat the home.
Right.
Like, they had these insane requirements of like thermal regulation, thermal loss, like, and this is a local council.
Right.
It's not like the state of Northshire, Hampton, England.
Right.
It wasn't even the county in England. It was literally this local block was like, well, these are the class restrictions we've designated on this property.
Right.
But like, people in California are like, we've got to be more efficient. Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, you could have solar, like, literally, like, if you sell fiberglass insulation in California, like, if California was serious about this thing, that would be illegal.
Yeah.
Because high-density polymer foams, which are oil-based, by the way,
and also,
which are twice as efficient, can keep bugs out, like, all of these things. Like, there are all of these little tweaks you could make to regulations to make the homes hyper-efficient.
This would be very, very unpopular, but one of the things that they could do to increase efficiency of homes is allow asbestos. Especially if it's sealed. Like, asbestos is incredibly efficient. It does cause...
my dad was literally talking about, like, being in a gun turret, like, in the middle of winter, when he was working ship repair, and then wrapping the asbestos blanket around him and being like, this is the warmest blanket I've ever had.
Well,
like,
and also, supposedly, and actually, I think it was Mises or Reason they talked about things that have been outlawed and demonized in American culture, one of them being asbestos, one of them being DDT, where they're like, there is evidence that these do cause problems. But at the same time, DDT was outlawed in the United States, and we don't really need it that much anymore. Yeah. But DDT, because it was outlawed in the United States, was also outlawed in places like Jamaica and South Africa, or in the continent of Africa, and things like that. And it's like, so DDT is outlawed. It's the most efficient poison at killing mosquitoes, and there are people who, in these countries, are dying in their thousands from malaria. Yeah. And you've made DDT illegal.
DDT is one of those substances, unlike Roundup.
Right.
There is no environmental, like, Roundup is starting to be not effective.
Right.
Like, the chemicals that were behind Roundup stopped being effective.
Yeah.
DDT, in the 30 plus years that it was used, never stopped being effective. It's literally the agent of death. Yeah. Like, DDT is super effective.
And it does cause problems, but a lot of the problems that it causes are a ramification of there not being as many mosquitoes. And so, like, they do cause problems. Like, I wouldn't say they cause cancer, because there's actually very little evidence that it's associated, and if it is, it's very low.
But it destroys the bald eagle's eggs.
It does weird things like that. So but that's a lot of that is food chain changes, which
But that's the thing is it's food chain changes that were introduced by the fact that there was an native species that was introduced in the food chain, like the tiger mosquito.
Right.
And like, suddenly we have like all these super mosquitoes, and it's like, no. These Indian mosquitoes that have outplaced the native mosquitoes shouldn't exist. Like starlings. Yeah. Like, if we could find a way to breed because there's a way you can breed mosquitoes where like the males can't, like, they will reproduce first, they'll be sexually mature way faster than every other one. Mm-hmm. And then they'll impregnate the females, and they will go out of mosquito heat. Right. And be useless. Right. They won't have offspring, and it's super effective. And people are like, oh, you're like tampering with nature. Yeah, tiger mosquitoes don't exist in the United States. Exactly, yeah. Starlings, which are a freaking plague, like the worst damn birds in the United States. Right. It should just be like bred, like, I hate cats. Yeah. As you know. Right. Because people let them out, and then they just wipe out
she quits. Yeah, Mom loves cats.
Well, that's the thing is, like, I like cats that you have indoors that don't crap and pee all over your furniture.
Well, I remember you had that one cat.
That I had did that. Yeah. But like, you let cats outside and they just kill things for fun. Right. If we could breed cats that only killed starlings, I'd be for it. I'd be like,
well, tell me what starlings do, because I had no idea they were a problem.
Well, they're not native.
They outbreed, they out-eat, and like, so most, because they're not native to North America, they're native to England, which is a much tougher environment to live. So they're much hardier than almost every native in North. It's like Canadian.
It's like these grapes. Yeah. The Rkatsiteli grapes is they're very, very hardy grape.
And they breed massively.
Okay.
Yeah. So when the blue jay shows up and there's like 2 blue jays per square mile, there's 1,000 starlings and they eat anything. Okay. So now if they ate all the tiger mosquitoes,
kind of like they have the problem in Florida is I remember I used to raise tilapia. Well, tilapia. Yeah. So I used to raise tilapia in my garage. For those of you who don't know, I had 44 tilapia that we bred to maturity or whatever, and then we didn't really end up eating them. We used them to fertilize the garden. But there's a big problem. So tilapia are basically the goats of the water. They're very difficult to kill, and they are they'll eat anything. They live in fresh water. They live in salt water. They live in brackish water. And one of the things that I had to do when I got one of the things I don't disagree that this should happen, but I don't agree that the government should do it, is they had to make sure that there was no access for me to let the tilapia out into the waterways in Virginia. And so I got a license or whatever to have the tilapia, and then eventually we got rid of all the tilapia. But it's sort of the same thing, is that like the tilapia get out and they do cause problems, and they're in the Everglades now, and that's a huge problem in the Everglades because they eat vegetation. They also will eat other fish eggs, and they will eat like tiny alligators.
Yeah, they're trash fish.
Yeah, they are. They just eat anything.
And they're illegal in California.
Yeah.
North of Bakersfield.
And the only thing they don't eat, apparently, is pythons.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, because there's pythons everywhere in the Everglades
also. Tilapia, but this is the classic Australia problem.
Right.
They bring in cave toads to wipe out something.
Right.
And then they brought in successive everything else that didn't work to wipe out cane toads.
It's like the king, the mice, and the cheese.
Right, yeah. That is, I remember that, yeah.
Luckily, mosquitoes only last for 1 season, so you can breed one that breeds faster. But like cane toads, unless you like found a way to like just make them not breed again.
See, also, I think Australia has a problem with the mice, is that like mice are not native to Australia, and they are everywhere.
That's why they brought in the cane toads.
Oh, is that what it was for?
I think tentatively think that's the reason.
Okay.
A toad will kill them. Oh, because the cats eat them.
Well, no. Cane toad, like toads.
Toads will eat meat.
Certain toads are like the most aggressive little, like, because they don't have a problem with, they don't need water.
Yeah.
Like, they're just super aggressive animals. And, like, cane toads are some of the worst. And, like, Australia is just like, they literally built a fence across Australia in attempts to stopping these things because the government brought them in. It was just, like, some dumb decision.
Right.
No. Bring in cats.
Well, I don't think...
Well, I think they did, and then the cats started getting crazy, too. And, like,
there's easier to control, because you can hit them with a shotgun.
Right. Or you could just spay them all and let them go, and they'll go crazy. But yeah, so anyways, this is I guess we're getting way off track, and we're about an hour and 30 minutes in, so I think it's about time to wrap up.
Yeah, so like I think that like the biggest thing to take away is like if you're trying to like one of the things that like progressive policy is always to try to tweak until you achieve the best thing. But they never tweak the right thing.
Right.
So like if you're looking at like energy efficiency, it's not how much energy the home is using in electricity.
Right.
Like necessarily, it's how much energy is the home expelling into the environment around it.
Right.
So you could have much more efficient walls and energy, like literally like fiberglass insulation. If you're like a progressive, why are you allowing fiberglass? It should be all spray foam insulation because that is super efficient per cubic whatever
or you
density.
Should start allowing asbestos again, because asbestos was incredibly efficient at the time, and asbestos doesn't cause cancer unless you're removing it. That's the big
it causes cancer in two places: in production, installation. Yeah. Because you have to cut it.
That's true.
So there's an argument to be made for standardized installation, like literally like installation pieces, like requiring where the like everything has to be. But that's why spray foam is better. Because
you know what they could do? They could just get 8 hours of sleep and reduce their cancer chances by 32%.
Well, it depends on the cancer.
But
that's the thing is like, and that's the problem is you're trying to roll the dice, and solve a problem. With like so the way the government acts is the government always acts in two ways. If you think about it, they act with buckshot and they act with snipers.
Right.
They're always trying to solve something in a general way or precision.
Right.
We're going to target these pedophiles and spend $2 billion and we're going to capture 20 of them.
Right.
Yes, if they captured 20 people who were going to molest children, if I had the opportunity to donate X percentage of my tax dollars to that, instead of just general taxes,
Right.
100% would give the money.
Sure.
No problem. I don't have a problem with that. But I also consider the fact that, like, the way the public school probably makes more pedophiles than anything else.
Yeah.
The fact that these people are
or the
tortured.
foster system.
Well, these people are tortured by not being able to get enough sleep because they're the way the schools are. Like,
Yeah.
all the things that goes into making a pedophile.
Yeah.
Foster system, like parents being abused by the
thing
school.
There's like a 30-something% chance, or not 30% chance, but like there's a huge number of kids that go into foster care that are molested by the foster parents.
Exactly.
Or they go into group homes.
It's just an unending consequence. Like, instead of spending my money on that, let me spend my money on these other things. But like, that's the thing is, like, the government always tries to act with these broad remedies instead of just going, well, what are the people actually asking for?
Right.
And this brings me to my final idea of this is kind of the Jason Stapleton argument about California. Right. Jason Stapleton, he's financially well off, but like, he is an entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. He lives and dies by the fact that he produces content that produces him income. And this is where I've kind of rethought my position on moving back to California.
Right.
I hate waking up and not knowing what the hell the weather is going to be. And that is Virginia.
Right. Yeah, that is Virginia. That's true.
I also hate the fact that at a certain point in the summer, my wife doesn't like to go outside. I'm not bothered by the heat anymore. I don't care.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've gotten very used to the humidity here too, and it took us a long time though. Remember when we first moved here, and we could not deal with it. But
where do I know that the weather is exactly the weather I want at any time?
California,
San Diego.
Yeah,
San Diego specifically, not San Diego County.
Right,
San Diego, by the water.
Right.
Like, I have family that lives in San Diego. I have family that lives outside in the county.
Jake was born in San Diego.
I was born there.
I absolutely.
I've not been there since I've been old enough to remember, though.
Yeah,
but when you guys moved there, possibly, I might
I'm
end
not
up
crazy about it.
Yeah,
But see, you've been there a couple of times, and you love it.
But I love the weather.
Right.
Like, if I was from El Dorado Hills, like, the way you describe El Dorado Hills would be amazing.
The problem is that El Dorado Hills, the way that we remember and describe it, doesn't exist anymore.
Exactly.
Yeah,
but
which
like,
is sad.
But when you walk out, like in San Diego, it is never below 50 degrees.
Yep.
And is rarely above 80. Now, San Diego County, 110.
Yeah,
San Diego.
That's true. Yeah, when you get further out.
San
Diego,
actually,
like where we lived when I was a kid, wasn't that like that was pretty bad?
Where we lived in San Diego?
Yeah.
Weather-wise, it was fine because it was essentially San Diego. Community-wise, it was...
Tijuana.
But that's the thing is, like...
but we just did,
But you can live
number one,
30 minutes up the coast from San Diego.
Right.
And you're not in L.A.
Right.
And you're not in the counties that lead to L.A. You're in the counties that are more... like...
Carlsbad or that type of place?
Kind of, less of the desert, more on the coast itself.
Something.
Sure. Or
Oceanside.
Yeah.
Oh, Oceanside.
Or you can go, 2 to 3 hours north of San Diego or north of LA itself. Yeah, on the coast.
Well, you could, or on the Grapevine, or you could go to Santa Cruz. Santa Cruz is nice.
Santa Cruz is very nice.
Yeah.
But
Santa Cruz is chilly.
It gets cold in this winter.
Yeah. Santa Cruz is chilly, but that's the type of weather that I like. Where, because the last time I went to as you know, like, I'm the type of guy who has to wear deodorant all the time.
Right.
When I'm in California, don't ever bring deodorant. Don't need to.
Yeah.
Now, if I'm going to Stockton, I have to.
I would ask the people around you before you.
No. Like my brother was with me, and my brother's the type of guy who's like perfectly groomed at any time, and he's not complaining.
Oh, also congratulations to your brother. He just graduated, so.
Yeah, but like that's the sort of thing where like when I put deodorant on in like San Diego, it's for like now I smell good, now I'm comfortable. Right. I'm not trying to beat off the fact that like I'm Swamp Thing because it's literally 82 degrees with 100% humidity.
Yeah.
Like I love Virginia, but like San Diego, like, and then the food in San Diego, like, because you can get avocados all the time, and it's a very big port city, even though like LA is the port,
right?
But like San Diego, like San Diego suffers from Norfolk syndrome, except for the port of San Diego is larger than the port of Norfolk.
Right.
The port of Norfolk, if it did not have the Navy here, would be the largest port on the East Coast. It would dwarf New York because it's just the access that you could buy the land. You could just buy out ODU and just literally make it the best port in the world.
Right.
Because there's just insane amount of portage.
And it's all deep water, which is nice.
Not all of it.
No, it's not all?
Yeah, most of it isn't.
Oh, really?
But the Navy's made most of it deep water.
Oh, okay.
But
they
like,
just dredge it up?
Yeah, they dredge. It's dredge the bay.
I didn't know that.
But like, that's the thing is like, it could be this amazing port, but it's not because the Navy takes up most of it, which is, whatever for here, that's fine. Right. But San Diego is the same way, except for San Diego still has portage.
Right.
Because it's just literally the coast. You just move down the coast. But I
encourage you guys to move to San Diego because it's a cheaper flight from Dallas.
Port of San Diego is polluted half the time because of the overflow of the sewer from
LA?
Mexico.
Oh, from Mexico, really?
Many different things. Yeah. But that's kind of the thing is, I don't want to move my daughter away from her grandparents. And both, other than the fact that my mother-in-law doesn't live, my mother-in-law still lives in Stockton. My father-in-law lives here.
Yeah.
My uncle-in-law lives here, and he's so San Diego is kind of the dream place. But that's the thing is, I'm not moving to San Diego until I can build my own home.
Sure.
Right.
Or buy my uncle's, because my uncle's home is great. He lives up on one of the canyons, on the Auroras, nice. And he's a 5.5 minute drive from Black's Beach.
Oh wow, yeah.
Which is the big San Diego beach, but he's literally it is the when I think of California, that's the classic California to me. Right. Where it's literally my grew up with stories of my dad surfing and everything like that.
We have and this is kind of goes back to a lot of my argument for Jefferson or whatever is that's not California to me at all.
Yeah.
Northern California is California to me, north of San Francisco.
Oh, and that's the thing is I love that part of I love that part of California too, and I've spent very little time there. But every time I'm there, I'm because I look at the Pacific Northwest, and I look at because my grandparents lived in Gig Harbor, and I'm if this was just warmer, and then you just go a little bit North California, and it's just enough warmer, that I'm okay, I'm not so cold all the time, and I'm not going it could snow,
right?
It could snow, and you're if you go in the mountains, it's gonna snow. Sure, that's fine.
Yeah, it is.
But that north area where you're I've got to wear pants,
right?
But I'm not wearing pants where I'm here, where I'm wearing flannel pajama pants under the heaviest denim I can find, plus a wool, a wool toggle coat and I'm wearing a jacket under that, and it's not cold here. Legitimately, it is never so cold.
I don't occasionally get sun.
This is the first place when I realized I can't run out to the car real quick barefooted in the middle of the night.
Yeah, well, but that's the thing is
I've been able to do before. I really can't do that here.
In my life, cold. I remember the times it's been below. I think, and I may be incorrect. I remember once it being a negative temperature.
Oh, really?
Oh, see, wow.
It being that cold, but 1 degree, and it's it was so cold, but that's not acceptable to me.
Well, it's one of the reasons why. I actually like it here too. One of the reasons though that I want to move somewhere with a little bit more stable temperature, like Dallas. It does get very hot. I'm okay with it being very hot. I'm not okay with it being very cold.
Yeah,
and that's kind of where we're from in California. Rarely below 50. Occasionally. No, I remember going to the
45 in the.
I remember going to the bus stop in junior high with all bundled up and stuff like that, and being we could see our breath. We could see our breath. It's so cold.
But we were on the side. We used to get a dusting of snow about once a year.
Once in a while, very rarely.
But we lived very close. We lived in the foothills.
We did live in the foothills. Yeah.
So within 45 minutes or an hour, we
could go out snow.
Lots of snow.
And that's
so that was a good deal.
But I don't know what it is about here, but it feels so brutal for so long.
It's the humidity. It's the humidity.
I guess that's it.
It's still humid,
right,
when it's cold.
Yeah.
Right.
And that water sits in the air, and that's the thing I love about San Diego. You can go swimming. You might have to wear a wetsuit, but I have an aunt who does an open mile swim almost every day of the year.
Yeah.
And I have to say, when we first moved to San Diego, that was our first duty station after we were married that we lived. We thought it was so humid. We couldn't believe it after coming down from
coming down from the north.
It's 90 degrees out and raining. We can't believe it. The rain's evaporating when it hits the sidewalk.
And then you move here and it's I can wring. I'm going to go hang the laundry on the line. Don't bother. You'll just wring the water back into it.
And then we visited Florida, and I went,
this is what real. Yeah, and that's
actually when I was out in Dallas this last couple of days. They were complaining that it was humid. They were like, "Oh man, it's so humid out today," and I was like.
You guys
it's so dry. My lips were cracked, and and I was.
So I'm just gonna have to buy you Aquifer on Amazon.
Yeah. Well, interviews, I didn't bring any Aquifer, but or Aquaphor, or however you say it. But I was there for interviews, and I was like, man, my lips are chapped and they're cracking, and like I'm gonna be embarrassed. So like I was putting on this like medicated chapstick. Like, remember when I had that that 1 year when I had like the vitamin B13 deficiency or whatever? My lips were all cracked and stuff. I felt like that was happening, and so I was just like putting on this medicated chapstick, trying to make sure that like I was presentable.
Yeah. You should have just gone.
I should have gone and picked up some Aquaphor, but I happened to have chapstick in my shaving kit. And so like I was just putting this on. But I guess nobody noticed because both companies that I interviewed with were like, oh yeah, we want to hire you and stuff. And so like I ended up choosing one, obviously, but like I think like sometimes I think things up more than they're going to be. Like I'm like, oh, my lips are chapped, so they're gonna hate me.
Yeah,
like that kind of weird thing.
And that's the thing is like, but like somebody in our office, always has chapped lips during the winter, and I'm like, dude, your lips are bleeding.
Yeah,
like I have product that will stop this in 3 days.
Yeah, well, your mom introduced me to Aquaphor, and like,
I know Jesse uses Aquaphor.
It is the I think I introduced Jesse to it.
Is that what I was?
Yeah. It is the most. It is the. I don't have to use chapstick in the day anymore because I put it on at night, and it keeps my lips moist all day long. Yeah,
it is
great.
Like
because I have chapped lips in Bahrain all the time.
Yeah, it is like it is bar none like the best because my sister has eczema, so she has like incredibly dry skin. But that's the sort of thing where it's like my wife's from Stockton, which is in the valley,
and
which is
dry,
and hot.
Yeah, and she longs for California.
Yeah,
but like. Because I originally was like, well, we'll move to San Diego because I can't live in, like, I'm not going to live in Stockton and, like, we can't live in San Francisco.
Yeah.
Like, I would love to live in San Francisco, but we can't live in San Francisco.
Right.
Like,
it's just too expensive, too crowded.
Well, and now, like, I'm afraid, like, my daughter will get murdered in the middle of the street for, like, crack money. But, like, that's where, like, I've kind of got to that point because it was Jason's table thing is, like, you are your own problem.
Right.
Anything that's wrong with your life, it's your own decision.
Sure.
Like, yes, you can be born retarded and, like, not function or be born with no limbs.
Right.
But you are, like, Stephen Hawking was literally, like, mind locked in his own body and still managed to produce content and, like, do something.
Very productive,
a very productive person. Like, you can do things. And, like, so Jason Stapleton's thing is, like, I hated Kansas because I didn't know what the temperature was going to be like.
Right.
I moved to LA and I know what it's going to be. Yes, it's going to be warm some days.
Right.
But I live in Venice. So, like, I can just literally walk out and there's the breeze. Yeah, he lives in Venice Beach. So, like, Venice.
He must make a lot of money.
Yeah, he does. But, like, this thing is Venice isn't as rich as people think because Venice is the shitty part of LA. Like, of LA itself, Venice is the shitty part.
So I think, doesn't some of the other libertarians that we listen to live in Venice Beach also?
I don't believe they live in Venice Beach. But one of them lives in Venice. Yeah, one of them lives in Venice Beach.
Brian
McWilliams lives in Venice Beach, but he makes fun of it. Because Venice Beach is literally like the dichotomy of LA. Bajillion-dollar home.
Oh, yeah.
Garbage bungalow. And it's not Compton.
Right,
but, like, garbage bungalow.
Right.
But that's the sort of thing where it's like
for $1.2 million.
Yeah, because they bought the one next to it, and they bought the one next to it, and they bought the one behind it, and they know they're going to get the other two when those two people die,
right?
Or they like basically property tax price them out. But that's the thing. Jason Stapleton's point was like, so I'm going to move to LA, which is going to have way more taxes than I do in Kansas City, but that's literally telling me to make more money,
right?
Like, why should I go like, oh, I'm going to lose more money? No, just make more money. And that's kind of where I got to my point in my life. I was like, no, that makes complete sense because there are things I don't like about here. And the only thing I like about here is like, I literally had everyone in my family that lives here fawning over my daughter.
Right.
And like, I can't imagine taking that away from my parents. But I also look at my parents and go, you can do the same, like the business I'm starting.
Sure.
My mom's doing it on Amazon or doing it through eBay, but like where she goes and buys crap from thrifting, which isn't profitable. It's not measured. It's not scientific. Like my parents can literally start doing what I'm doing and make enough money to move to San Diego.
Yeah, and I think your dad would probably like moving back there.
Like I think my dad would hate moving back to San Diego because it wouldn't be the same.
Right.
Until he went out on the beach. Yeah, he's from San Diego. Okay. But like my dad could literally walk out on the beach in San Diego with my granddaughter or with his granddaughter, my daughter, and be like, nope.
Yeah,
this is worth it. Everything was worth it. Yeah. Literally, because like
I just think it's so hilarious that your big reasoning is that you want to know what the weather's like every day. And as lovely as Hawaii was, and the weather was perfect all the time, that's the one thing I didn't like about it, is that it never changed.
Well, and that's the thing is, like, in Hawaii, like, you can go up to the top of the mountain and experience snow, but, like, in California...
Well, no, only on the Big Island. I don't know why.
Well, but that's the thing. Like,
that's the only place.
Yeah, but on, like, in California, if you go interior and go up, like, if you go up the coast, you're going to spend all day trying to get through LA.
That's what everybody says that they...
Weather.
That's what everybody says.
Any kind.
Everybody says is the great thing about living in San Diego or whatever is that you can be skiing in the morning and surfing in the evening.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Is like,
it's true.
I mean, maybe.
Like
maybe kind of. I mean, it's a long drive.
Yeah,
it is a long drive,
and it's not great.
But also, Mom, Knoxberry Farm, and you could go see the peanuts.
Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing: is if you're as wealthy as I as I imagine I would need to be to live in San Diego.
Right.
Yeah.
Like San Diego proper, you're not driving.
Yeah,
you're flying.
You're
just flying.
Actually, I mean, and I'm not arguing your reasoning at all. I just think it's funny that I have a completely different
exactly
set of ideas of what I would want because I like.
I guess and that kind of goes back to the like in Van Bavark argument is value is subjective.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing is I like seasons.
Right.
What I don't like is the fact that I haven't like one of the things like. I love San Diego, and I've experienced many different seasons in San Diego, but I've never lived a full 2 years in San Diego to kind of experience El Nino, La Nina, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But one of the things that like I don't think you can ever beat in Hampton Roads is 77 degrees, 45% humidity. So it's a warm breeze with a cool...
Today is great,
But the back half of today was beautiful. The front half of the day was a little too warm.
Oh, you think so?
It was a little like because
we went out walking and I thought it was really nice.
2 o'clock was like 2 o'clock is when the weather really changed.
Yeah,
like the cloud cover blew in.
Yeah,
it was like you can't get like I understand like San Diego has really great weather and I'm arguing for it like literally talking about moving there, but like. Hampton Roads, like in the fall and the fall and the spring, have these times of the year where it's the humidity is up and it's a range between about 66 and 75, where it's perfect.
Yeah,
there's enough moisture so you're not like drying out, but there's not so much moisture that you're just drenched in sweat.
Sure.
But you can work up a sweat if you needed to. But you could easily just like if you're a guy, take your shirt off. If you're a girl, like just pull your hair back off the your long hair.
Now you're saying girls can't take their shirt off?
Yes,
they can, but the government says they can't. So, but like that's the sort of thing. Like you can easily cool down,
right?
Like you can cool down very easily.
I'm teasing you.
But that's what kills me about like here is I haven't gotten that this entire year. It's been cold, and then suddenly it's like 92 degrees.
It's only May. Yeah, I see what you're
And it's
saying.
only May. And June doesn't have those days.
Well, and I believe that's what I'm told is going to be in Bahrain. Now, I haven't lived there a full year yet, and I haven't been through a summer. So I was very surprised to find the winter chilly there.
Yeah.
I mean, like Jay had to actually go out and buy a sweatshirt, like a fleece sweatshirt.
Yeah.
Because he didn't bring anything like that. Because I had been traveling beforehand, had jackets, but I mean, I haven't worn shorts there yet, I don't think. I mean, it's been chilly. But from what I understand, as soon as I get back...
It'll be like 110.
And also humid. And although there's a big dust storm going on, I think.
Yeah, and that's right. Yeah, that's the thing. Is like I don't long for extreme weather. I don't mind seasons, but I don't like the idea that like I have to wake up and then dress completely differently day to day. Like
I like that. I think it's fun.
Yeah.
I think it can be fun, but like I'm also from a place where it's been that way for I'm 31 years old. Yeah. It's been that way for a very long time, and
except for those 3 months that you live in Stockton or 4 months.
But that's the thing is like even
it's hot all the time, probably.
But like no, it was I was there from January until about May. But like it was very nice weather, but like it started getting unreasonably warm in the late day. But like the last time, like I went out for my grandmother's funeral to San Diego, and it was June, and my cousins were like, "You picked we understand that you didn't pick to come during this time,
right.
But you picked the worst time to visit." And I'm like, "It's June. How the hell is this the worst time?" And they're like, "Well, the marine layer's in, so it was cloudy the entire time."
Yeah.
I got like one of the worst sunburns because it's literally we were out at the beach, we were doing all this stuff, like we rented bikes, we were out doing stuff, working up a sweat. But like as soon as you stop and just had some water, you're like, oh, I'm great now. Like I can go another hour and a half.
Sure.
And then
that is one thing about California heat is you go in the shade, and just have a cool drink, and it's like 20 degrees lower in the shade.
Yeah, and I looked at my skin and I was just like, oh, my wife is gonna be pissed because my wife like melanoma runs in her family. She's just like, stay out of the sun, you idiot. And I'm like, oh, there's the marine layers in. And my cousins were like, yeah, we all have sunscreen on. I'm like, yeah, you wussies. Shit.
No, because it's getting late and I've got to quit my job tomorrow. Yeah. Which I'm not looking
quitting
forward
or are you
to.
putting 2 weeks notice?
Putting my 2 weeks notice.
Okay.
And but knowing our boss is he could have any sort of reaction to that. I think he'll have a reasonable reaction. But,
one hopes.
But so we're gonna go ahead and call it quits for today. So check us out at
Horton Vineyard, Rkatsiteli. I think that's
Rkatsiteli.
Yeah. 2016.
Yeah. Yep.
My wine glass doesn't smell of tuna, even though it's been empty for a while.
Yeah.
I really think it's one of those varieties that if you like whites, especially if you like Pinots, it's not close enough to a Riesling, which is surprising because I think Riesling's an older grape variety. Like it's close enough to Rieslings that like if you like Rieslings, it's definitely worth a shot. I mean, at $16, like really, I don't think you're doing yourself a disservice. Now, if you could get a more expensive varietal,
sure,
maybe make that your introduction to try to get some more teased out of it because it seems like this just wasn't price-wise like the strongest version of it possible.
Right.
Oh, you didn't like it because it had a cat on it.
Well, the giant church. I'm an atheist.
Wait for you there.
Well, I mean, honestly, the Horton, all of them have the cat on them.
Well, to be honest, like toward the end, like I really thought it was a really strong, like it's not a strong flavor.
No,
but like I thought it was a very strong in good wine. Like I definitely would try that again. And
sure,
the problem I have is like we run into a lot with these is especially these off varieties is there's one
right. Yeah, and then that is definitely the case with this. I did talk to one of the chicks at the wine place, Total Wine, and she said they do have other ones. They just don't get them in very often.
Yeah, and that's
this
hard.
was in the Virginia locals.
Oh, nice.
So I had to get help finding it.
Gotcha.
But
I know where the locals are there.
Yeah, so this was in there. She did say that they get some of the New York of this varietal. This lady was very knowledgeable. It's that fat lady that that real big one. She's very helpful. And she's the one who recommended that the Cabernet Franc that we had that I thought was very good.
We both thought it was good.
Yeah, and so she was there and she said, "Oh yeah." She knows a lot, so I think she probably had like everything in there. But she said, "Oh yeah, this is," and she did. She said, "It's pretty good if you like Pinot Gris." So it's very similar to that, but it's it is different. But so go ahead and check us out. We'll probably have a little bit of a review on this on tastinganarchy.com.
Yeah. Tasting Anarchy on Twitter.
You can see it at Tasting Anarchy on Twitter. I think that's really our only places at the moment.
Yeah.
If you have any questions or anything, you can always email us at tastinganarchy.com.
tastinganarchy@gmail.com.
And that's about it. So Jacob Lindsay, Mario Lindsay,
and I'm Mason. Have a good one, everybody.
Good night.
Hoy! Drink at me. Oh, give me some of that slop. Oh, pass that bottle to me. If you want to get along in Peterstown, buy some wine and pass it around. The age runs up to 49. All them cats, they love sweet wine. Drinking wine's for you to drink wine. Wine's for you to drink wine. Wine's for you to drink wine. Pass that bottle to me. Hoy! Wine, wine, wine. Elderberry. Wine, wine, wine. Cherry, cherry. Wine, wine, wine. Blackberry. Wine, wine, wine. Horton sherry. Wine, wine, wine. Oh, pass that bottle to me. Now down on Gilsey at Willie's Den, he wasn't selling but American gin. One soldier wanted a bottle of wine. He hipped that cat for $1 and a dime. Drinking wine for you to drink wine. Wine for you to drink wine. Wine for you to drink wine. Pass that bottle to me. Now I got a nickel. Have you got a dime? Let's get together and get some wine. Somebody's fifth and somebody's fourth. When you get together, you're doing things smart. Drinking wine, for you to drink wine. Wine's for you to drink wine.